Hey, this is Austin Weber with Weber Bracketology, where every day is Selection Sunday, and there is 2 days till the real Selection Sunday, and conference tournaments are in full swing. Some of them are starting to wrap up, and we're getting really close to this final bracket being done. And yesterday, Thursday, was a pretty big day in terms of how some teams moved around, especially with the bubble. Some teams who are in and some teams who are out that had a big effect on, and today is going to be just as crazy. It's really going to be crazy every day until then, but these yesterday and today, especially because of so many teams are in action compared to the last few days where there's only semifinals and finals going on. But yeah, let's take a look and see how yesterday really had an impact. And on the one line, didn't have an impact at all. Only Kansas played and they won, so they're going to stay up there at the top line. The two line, that's not going to really change either. Baylor did lose to Iowa State, but I still think that their resume keeps them as a two. I think the only reason they fall, I think Marquette wins the Big East. I think Baylor could fall to a three line, even if Marquette just at least gets to the championship. I think Marquette's really the only team that can move up there. And then on the three line, there is Marquette. Gonzaga, they're going to stay there. They've already won their conference. UConn, I don't think is going to be off the three line win or lose no matter what happens. So UConn's pretty safe there. And Kansas State lost to TCU, but they're pretty safely on the three line as well. Four line, just the same. Nothing's changed. Xavier almost lost to DePaul. That could have been bad. But I still think no matter what, the four line is almost pretty much set at this point. Then the fives, where are the fives? The fives. So Iowa State's win. They're kind of bordering on a four. I mean, I think they could get there if they keep winning, just because now I think they're 10-10 in quad one, and that's a lot of quad one wins, even with their 12 losses. They've just played such a tough schedule, and they've consistently been winning against these really good teams that they're playing. And San Diego State is also sitting at a five. And then Miami and TCU's win against Kansas State pretty much solidified them as a five seed. On the six line, St. Mary's has dropped down to the six line. And then other than them there, Kentucky stays there. Creighton's there. Kentucky, I don't know if Kentucky really can move up any further. Maybe if they win the SEC. Creighton, I don't know if they can move up either if they win the Big East. But there's always the chance. It really depends on what happens in front of them. Duke, though, I think has a chance at a five seed. They're actually my highest six seed right now. It's really because they've avoided having any bad losses on their resume. Lots of teams in this area, like Creighton, Kentucky, like these teams, they have some bad losses on their resume. Duke doesn't, and while they may not have all the great wins, beating Miami today and then either Virginia or Clemson in the ACC championship, I think they could really be a five seed at that point. On the seven line, Texas A&M is still there. I think they can move up to the six line with some big wins in the SEC tournament. Northwestern, maybe they can move up from the seven line. Don't really think so. Michigan State could possibly. Missouri, I think. Seven line's probably their ceiling. On the eight line, it's kind of different because Iowa and Illinois lost, so they dropped. Iowa's loss was bad to Ohio State, but Arkansas beat Auburn, so they moved up to the eight line. And Florida Atlantic, I believe they beat Western Kentucky, so they kind of just moved up to the eight line just because of Iowa and Illinois' losses. Maryland, West Virginia lost to Kansas, but if you compare their resume, just they have six quad one wins. I mean, that's really good, but they don't have, like teams like Duke and Iowa State, they don't have any bad losses. It's just their number of losses, 14. That's kind of why they're that low. Then Iowa, like you can compare them to Iowa, who has 13 losses, and they may have a few more quad two wins, but they have a quad four loss, two quad three losses. So that's kind of why I think West Virginia belongs on that eight line. And then Boise State narrowly beat UNLV in overtime. They stay there. And Memphis has moved up with Auburn's loss. So Auburn moved down to a 10. And onto the 10 line, USC stays there even with a loss to Arizona State. Mississippi State did beat Florida, so they're there. And then Penn State's win against Illinois because of the losses around them in the bubble. I think Penn State's up to a 10 seed. They're securely in the tournament, but I think 10 seeds probably as high as they get. maybe a 9 seed if they make a really good run in the Big Ten tournament, but they're surely in. And then on the 11 line, the last two buys, NC State had a big loss to Clemson after a big win against Virginia Tech, but they're safely in. I feel like they could move to the last four in if some wonky things happen. Providence, same thing. They could move down a little bit. It really just depends on what happens to those teams below them, who have a lot of them are still playing in action. Actually, we look at the last four in. Pittsburgh is out, but they're in the tournament. But they're out of the ACC tournament. And then Utah State, they have a net of 18. I just really don't think that could be kept out. They're going to be in the tournament unless they lose their next game and there's a lot of surprise auto bids that come in. But really, I think Utah State's going to be pretty safe. Rutgers, with their win yesterday, I think secured their spot in the tournament unless some crazy things happen. And then Arizona State, I have moving in over Nevada. Nevada lost to San Jose State, which isn't really a bad loss, but Nevada's just been losing games. They don't have a ton of great wins on their resume, and Arizona State has that Arizona win. They beat USC. They have a win against Creighton. So I think Arizona State is in the last spot for the moment. There was no auto bids secured yesterday, so that's all pretty standard what's been the last few days. And then look at the last four buys. Penn State, Mississippi State were the other two in there. We looked at the last four in, and then the first four out. I do have Nevada as the first team out. They can't work their ways back in. Oklahoma State, the second team out, they can't really work themselves in either. I know a lot of people may have them in, but they have 15 losses, which would be the most in the field. And I just don't like West Virginia has 14 losses, but Oklahoma State doesn't have the consistent wins against the better teams, I think. And they have lower metrics, and they do have a loss to Southern Illinois out of conference. So they didn't do as much out of conference that West Virginia did. So that's kind of why they're out. Clemson, they play Virginia today in the ACC semis. I don't think they can get an auto bid, and they can get an at-large bid. I don't know if their resume will allow it, depending on what happens with Utah State, Arizona State. But they could certainly get an auto bid, and that would knock out one of those last four in. Wisconsin, they're out. North Carolina is out. And then Michigan's also out. And then Oregon and Vanderbilt, other than Clemson, are really the two teams I'd be looking at to kind of mess things up by getting an auto bid. Oregon's in the semis. They play UCLA, and then the winner of Arizona State, which they could win those games, and they could get themselves in and knock someone out. That could be Arizona State they actually knock out. And then Vanderbilt, they have a little bit more work to do in the SEC tournament than Oregon, Clemson do, already being in the semifinals. And Vanderbilt, I think, has a tougher road, but obviously they've been playing well, so they could kind of get in. But really, Clemson and Oregon are the main teams that teams like Utah State, Arizona State, and even Rutgers. Rutgers, I feel like even though their win might have solidified their ability to get an at-large, I don't think they are safe just yet. Because if you look at the teams around them on the bubble, I don't think Pittsburgh is going to be lower than them. NC State or Providence. I think Rutgers. Really, if Utah State, Arizona State, and then one of those other teams win, they could be out. But there's a lot of games to be played, so who knows what exactly could happen over these next few days. It's going to be crazy, but I think if things kind of go how we expect, I don't think any new teams will be added. I think these will be like the last teams in, but who knows? It's already been crazy for these conference tournaments. So if you enjoyed, make sure you subscribe here at Weber Bracketology and visit weberbracketology.com to see more like the S-curve. But we are getting really close to Selection Sunday, and it's going to be really interesting to see how these bubble teams play out, and even how the seeding plays out throughout the bracket. Because, I mean, while I feel confident where I have teams, it's always crazy what the committee is going to do. So enjoy this last real weekend of college basketball before the tournament.